Hi everyone, it is week number 8. This is Martin, just in case you forgot who I was. This video will be about the causes of the Civil War, what life was like as a soldier during the Civil War, and what life was like on the home front. The years were 1861 to 1865. During this time, the country's undergoing an industrial revolution, westward expansion, and then we have this war. This is my favorite topic to teach you, and I'm so bummed I'm not there to teach it with you. We do such fun things around this and such cool projects and things that just wouldn't translate over distance learning, or they would, but we're just not good enough at distance learning just yet. But I am going to run you through a series of things that I'd like to teach you about, and during the movie you will see a form pop up. You'll have to fill that form out before you can go on and listen to the rest of the video. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I'm learning new things, guys, so hopefully, fingers crossed, it works. Miss you. Have a great short week, and I look forward to your responses. Do know that I do respond to everything that you give me. I know there were some issues with the feedback I gave on the Flipgrid, but I did respond to everyone, so you might want to go into Flipgrid to see my response. So here we go. So the causes of the Civil War, right? Everyone always thinks slavery. Slavery was the cause of the Civil War. That's not the only reason. So if we look here, it was definitely the economy, economy particularly of the South, this cottonocracy, right, where they depended so much on cotton and slave labor. And that really was the driving force for the South and really led to their decision to secede or withdraw from the Union. It was also about states' rights and federal rights. And this could get really muddy if I dive really deep into it, and we're not going to dive deep into these muddy waters. But yes, it says the southern states wanted to be able to nullify federal acts. Yes, but then there's who has more power? Is it the federal government? Is it Washington, D.C. and the president? Or is it the states that have more power? Also, they would fight over when a new state would come into the Union, was it going to be a slave state or would it be a free state? And for a while they were able to balance it out, but then after a while it just became really a disaster. And so then, of course, we have slavery, right? And as the image says, it is a broad category that definitely has two contributing factors. Slave and non-slave states, abolitionist movement in the North, all of these things coming together, Harriet Beecher Stowe bringing the slavery issue to the forefront, exposing the horrific conditions really did help catapult the Civil War effort, or the abolitionist effort, I should say. Now, an immediate result. These first three are really working up. They've been there since the early 1800s. We could even go back into the 1700s and attribute a lot of these causes to the Civil War. But the election of Abraham Lincoln caused an immediate secession of the 7 southern states, and others would follow. So Lincoln wins the North, and immediately a month later, the South secedes, makes it its own country, or creates its own country, calls itself the Confederacy, and elects Jefferson Davis as their president. So it's a very interesting situation that goes on down there. So I want to go ahead and talk to you a bit about what life was like on the battlefield. So I found this really amazing website called battlefields.org. And the average soldier could be the age of 13 all the way to the age of 30s, 40s, 50s. But you really should have been over 18. So some younger men would write 18 on the bottom of their shoe, and they would, when they ask the question, are you over 18? Yep, I'm over 18. So there were children that were also part of the soldiers, and part of the I cannot get the word out, but it'll come to me. They were also they would play instruments, the drums, as they walked into battle. So on the battlefield, regiments are the word. Okay, So of course we have your Union soldiers, okay, that was the United States of America, and then you had your Confederates, part of the Confederacy. Again, the average soldier under 16, 10%, a small amount, but those are your drummer boys. 20% over 23, but that 70% is 16 to 23, and you guys are not far off that mark, which is really crazy. They were old and young, but they were mostly young. Okay, this is what an average soldier looked like. These men were certainly from the Union. They wore navy and blue. You can tell by their hats. When it rained, the hats came down flat, so when it rained, the rain would go right down into their wool coats. Could you imagine wearing wool in July? Yes. So these men are posing for a picture. This is the first time we have pictures in history. That's why I also like to teach you this. Matthew Brady will get all the credit for the Civil War photos of the time, but Andrew Gardner, we're gonna give him credit here. Andrew Gardner was the photographer of the Civil War. Of course, why did they fight? Why did these men fight? Well, some of them are very young. The army was offering them food and board. There was an Irish famine at the time, so Irishmen were coming into the country in droves. They get off the boat. There'd be a recruiter officer. Yep, let's go ahead. Let's do this. So many of them fought just for that reason. The Confederates fought for more of a real reason to stop the North from taking over the South, and to make sure that slavery lived on. There was like this purpose. The Union, not as much purpose, which really attributed to a lot of the battles that happened in the beginning of the war. The South won. So that was very surprising. We thought it was going to be a quick war. Okay, so what did they carry? They carried 1, a canteen, 2, a frying pan, just a little bit of lard in there, 3, their sack, their Havery sack, which number 16, look at number 16, that is another sack, but that is covered with almost like a rubber, and it made it rainproof, really. So I don't think, number 7 might be like the blanket, but Goodyear, who makes tires, they actually came out with the blanket. Underneath the blanket, they would put the same material that number 16 has underneath number 7, so when you laid it out, you wouldn't get wet. Number 6 is soap, 10 is a comb, you have 12, you have your money, and then of course your utensils, and this is everything you would carry in that black sack in that number 16. Number 7, they would kind of like put it around like a sash. It's kind of cool. Okay, and then, so what do they wear? So on my left, right, is this Confederate, where you have the brim hat, which was good because it prevented the rain from coming down. You looked more like a farmer. It wasn't exactly the best looking uniform, right? Most official. Then on my right hand side, I have my Civil War. Notice their shoes would get worn out. They were only issued shoes every couple of months if they were lucky. So especially the Confederates, that was your Union, all blue. Confederates was that khaki or beige color. What did they eat? Salt, pork, bacon. That's why they needed that frying pan. Soft bread or flour. Hardtack is that cracker looking like a saltine. It was very hard. They would put lard on it. They would fry it. It would loosen up. And then they would eat it. Beans, anything that was quick and in a can almost. Rice or hominy. Homony's corn. Coffee, tea, sugar, and vinegar. The North did have coffee. The South could not get coffee because eventually the other countries stopped importing and exporting or being trade partners with the South. So the South started not having supplies such as coffee, so the men would trade. Where did they sleep? Well, some would sleep in log cabins. A lot of them would sleep in pop-up tents. The Confederacy wasn't as well geared up for these things, but you can read there, the cabins look natural, like logs. They didn't always sleep in these, but this is if they would hunker down for a while during the winter months. And how do they communicate? Through letters that go back and forth to their families. Sometimes and often enough, there were 2-3 boys from one family off at war, and the death toll was just astronomical in the Civil War. When they weren't fighting, they were drilling. They were drill, and they were mostly drilling. They weren't in battle as much as you would think. So like, not every day of a war is a battle. So many of my students always think like they're in battle every day. On their free time, they would play cards, they would tell stories, sing songs, but mostly drilling and really taking care of the equipment and ammunition and things like that. Many of the men lost limbs. They not always because of just battle wounds, but battle wounds would become infected and they had nothing to combat the infection and they would have to lose a limb. Yeah. Okay, disease and hygiene. They didn't understand disease and hygiene. So everyone and everything smelled during the Civil War. The streets in Washington, D.C., there were body parts, right, like in piles. The White House, the front of the White House had pop-up tents. There were men camping. There were soldiers. It was a soldier encampment. I'm watching my time. So of the more than 620,000 soldiers who died in the war, more than 400,000 died of sickness and disease. So we have our weapons. That musket really killed more soldiers than anything else except disease. Its effects also created wounds that were difficult to treat, and that's what I wanted to talk about, is it would make a wound that was difficult to sew up, difficult to treat, and it would often get infected. So I'm not going to go into all of this, except I want to give, especially right now with our essential workers, to give nurses a shout out, women on the home front, and I think I'll make that next week's video instead of today because my video was already 12 minutes long. We have women on the battlefield helping the men on the battlefield. Then we have women on the battlefield, Clara Barton, or Angel of the Battlefield. So women, if they were not married, especially if they were not married, they would go to help the cause. So lastly, about 2.75 million soldiers fought in the Civil War, and then of course more than 620,000 men died. Next week I will talk to you about life on the home front, and then we'll answer some questions and forms. All right, guys, have a great week, and have fun with this, and ask me questions if you want. And I will not have office hours tomorrow because I'm just rolling this out, and I might push that to Wednesday, but I will send an email out in confirmation. All right, bye-bye.